So welcome, Kim and Alicia, and welcome to everybody else that comes along for our little workshop here today on blitzing depression. So some of you have already joined me for some of the other mini blitz workshops we've done, and that is things like we've done some work on anxiety, some work on pain. We've done a class on chakras as well. And today we're going to work on depression, because what I find is that depression is one of the biggest things that seems to be on the rampage at the moment, particularly with our young people. And if I can help a few more people to feel a whole lot better, then that's what my purpose is. And so I will now just open up and share my screen in a moment. For those that don't know me, I'm Carol Macrae. I'm a clinical and 5-path hypnotherapist. I am a Reiki master and teacher. I'm qualified in Touch For Health Kinesiology, Seichim. I'm a Seichim master, which is Egyptian healing. I'm the chair for Reiki Australia. I've done all sorts of other sorts of training. I used to run fitness centers for 20 years with my husband for part of that. I taught yoga and Tai Chi and Pilates, and in the old days it was aerobics classes and fitness programs and weight loss programs and gym and circuit classes and aquarobics, and you name it, I did it. And it was an interesting time of my life. And in fact, working in the fitness industry is the thing that stuffed my knees that got me onto Reiki, which was perfect for me. And I've also had breast cancer twice, and I've had bone cancer once. I was able to heal the bone cancer myself with Reiki, self-hypnosis and meditation. So it's been a really interesting journey. But what I've always found is that nothing is meant to hurt us. Everything's meant to open us up to look at our life differently and to really stretch us and grow us. And so when I think of obstacles, I always think, how can this serve me? So I can turn around so it becomes an opportunity rather than an obstacle. So I'm now going to share my screen so that we can open up our little mini blitz workshop. And I'm hoping that you guys have already got your manual. Did you already have a look at the manual, or you haven't? I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes,
but anyway,
no, I've got that printed out.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I've actually, since I sent the first links out to you, I've done an upgrade, and since then I've done another one which I haven't put up there. So there's just a couple of extra pages, and you'll be able to have a look at that. And I just think it's going to be like a work of art in progress, because the more tools I learn, the more I want to share those so we can empower people to start to heal. And so I'm keeping these manuals on my website, which is just carolmacrae.com. I've now got a page. It says workshops. There's Reiki workshops there, but there's also a page for the mini blitz workshops so that you'll be able to find them. And I'm thinking also that there might be some other videos I want to record and put in there, because when we did our anxiety workshop, I didn't get time to do a hypnosis session for post-traumatic stress, and I just thought we might actually, or panic attacks rather, and I just thought I might film a few extra things and shove them in there, so that rather than having to listen to 2 hours or 3 hours, we can just be able to go straight to those techniques if you find that you need them when things get tough, because life is not so smooth and easy. It is just basically an up and down, and it's just about us learning to navigate that. And so here is our little mini blitz. I changed that. This picture was a sad one. I changed it to a happy one. And there's a little bit about me. So we'll be talking about the secret language of feelings today, what depression is, lifestyle factors and thinking styles, steps for making some change, self-help tips to deal with depression. And we're going to do some EFT, which we did in our anxiety workshop. We've got a new technique called the spin technique, and we're going to do some EMDR, which is about the eye modalities. And these are just NLP techniques that can work really well at shifting emotions really quickly. I don't know that your menu will have the EMDR in it, but you'll have it by the end of the day. So we're going to move right through. Because this manual is available, I'm not going to be standing here. Yeah, Beautiful. So I'm not going to just read the whole manual. We're just going to flick through so we can get right into the the practical, where we can start to make some changes. So we will also be doing some talking about meeting our own human needs to reduce depression, and some hypnosis to deal with that as well. Self-esteem, worryingness, what everybody else thinks, so we can get back into our own pathway. So a moment ago, before we turned the camera on, I said to you, set your intention for today and just decide what it is you want to get out of our session here today. What I want you to remember, though, is that when we focus on what we don't want, we tend to draw more of that to us. And when we focus on what we do want, again, it's like a magnet. So whatever we put our focus on is what we're going to draw to us. And if we can start to focus on the results that we want and wanting to feel better, it's going to get us a lot further down the track. Because interestingly enough, as human beings, we've got this predisposition to always look for the bad. And that is really from the old days, our ancestors running through the jungle, and they had to always be on hypervigilant alert in case there was a tiger about to jump out and grab them. So we tend to scan and look for negatives before we look for the positives. So that's something that we need to understand too, because it's part of the whole depression and thinking style. And it's really, depression is not you, it is a thinking pattern that needs to be looked at from the outside so we can make some changes. And so the secret language of feelings I've talked about before, and I think I'm going to just shrink that down so you can see it a little bit more. So we get a bad feeling and we tend to distract. Now, for most people, that's going to be anxiety, because that's one of the earliest responses to trauma, or even being in the womb sometimes, when mum might have anxiety because there's adrenaline, there's cortisol, and then that little baby will feel that too and come into the world with that predisposed focus on an anxious feeling. And everything after that, it gets triggered. So as we're going up, if we've got an anxious feeling or a sad feeling or a lonely feeling, we tend to distract. So we go round and round in circles. And that might mean smoking, drinking, eating, turning into a workaholic. It might mean gambling. It might be hoarding. It might be being a shopaholic. It might be OCD, because OCD is extreme anxiety too. And so some of those things, people don't even understand that they're just symptoms. They're symptoms of a deeper underlying emotional stuff, problem that might be lying below the surface. So if we keep going round and round in circles without being able to deal with that core emotion, it can lead to frustration, because frustration means whatever I'm trying isn't working, so I need to try something else. And we go round and round in circles for a few more years, and then that can lead to depression. And depression can mean we feel helpless, we feel hopeless, we feel stuck, and we don't know what to do to get out of that hole. The truth is, you can't really get rid of that depression until you deal with whatever the core emotion is. And through 5-path hypnosis, which I do, it's really a different type. It's not just plain hypnosis, just ordinary direct suggestion, which is what we will be doing today, because I can't really do age regression with you guys online while we've got an audience, because they're things that you will have that are personal just to you. And in which case we would then be able to bring up those feelings you don't like, go back and find out where they've come from, and then go before you ever had a bad feeling about yourself and bring the good feelings through. And our third session would generally be about clearing away any unresolved anger so that we can move forward, remembering that really forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. It's about letting go of the hold that it has over us so that we can start moving forward again. So that's just a little understanding. And again, there are the main emotions and what the subconscious need is. And it's like we do have this seething cauldron of emotion that's waiting to explode, and all the flames that feed that storehouse, that cauldron, are from the past, the present, and the future. But everything in our past sets us up for how we respond in the present, and that affects our expectation about the future. So it means that, again, if we want to start moving forward, we need to clear the emotion around the past. We don't have to live there. We don't have to go over the same old stuff over and over and over. We just want to get some knowledge about where it's come from so that we can start to work on the emotional subconscious level and bring through a better feeling. And so I've got that information on depression there, but I'm just going to grab something else too. And because I'm attached to the microphone, see if I can reach. And I could have brought this over earlier. And it's really about understanding the fight-flight process. And so I hope you can still see this. I'm just going to, I'll stop the share for a moment. Oh, yeah, stop that. And so it's kind of, this is a child's toy. So yes, you're right. We've got the left hemisphere of the brain, which is really the conscious mind, and the conscious rational mind is logical and it's rational and it wants to understand how everything works, but simply understanding is enough to make change. So the conscious mind's 5 to 10%. Now the subconscious mind on the right side of the brain is really it's really to do with emotions. It's your creative part. It's the part that you daydream in. And it's also where your habits live, your patterns live, your belief about yourself lives. And so it's 90 to 95%. So the back part of the brain is the amygdala, and that's your fight-flight center. And every time you get stressed, it goes on high alert, and we go into that fight-flight experience. But the truth is it's more than fight or flight. It's fight, flight, freeze, or surrender. And if you've ever been in a stressful situation, you'll know that all of those options can come up for us. We can stand our ground and take on that lion or that person. We can run. We can, so that's fight or flight is running away. We can freeze and just try to make ourselves small, like we're hiding in the jungle, so that that person doesn't attack us or just walks away. Or we can surrender. So if somebody's holding you up with a gun and they say, give me all your money, well, you could fight them, you could run, you could just freeze like a little hare in with the headlights in your eyes, or you could surrender and say, here, take what you want. Would you like a check? And so every time we get stressed, it goes fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze. So we get at full capacity. Now, when we're doing things like age regression, we are pulling out all the little triggers so we get a brain reset. That's the aim of some of the techniques that we use in hypnosis. Now, since I've got this here, I'm going to show you this as well. This is an energy stick. Oh, it looks like it's smashed. We've had a child. I'm not going to show you that now, but basically it was just to demonstrate some energy. So I'm just going to go back in now and share our screen once again. And where is our little, I think that's the one we had before. There it is. And we'll come back onto our page where we were a moment ago. And so I'm just going to go through fairly quickly, but let me also say, if you've got any questions, please just, I think there should be somewhere you can put your thumb up or your finger up, or just wave at me, or just unmute Alicia, and I'll know that you've got something you want to talk about, and just ask those questions as we go along, because just remember, if you've got questions, probably anybody else that's watching this in the future will also have similar questions as well. And so the interesting facts about depression are, in March this year, they did a study in Australia, and what they came up with was 42.9% of people aged 16 to 85 rather, have experienced mental disorders of some kind. And one of the main ones is going to be anxiety, but depression is right up there with that these days. And let me say that when I have clients come in, no matter what they're coming in for, if they come in to lose weight or they're coming in to quit smoking, majority of those people have actually got depression as well. So it seems to be a thing in our society at the moment, and there are lots of reasons for that, particularly since COVID, when people were locked down and weren't able to get their primal needs met for communication and connecting to other people. So it's on the increase. And what we also know that is, if you go to a doctor and you've got depression or anxiety, they're going to give you a tablet most likely. And that is not necessarily what we want for people to be a whole society that's on medication. Now, let me also say that quite often people do need the medication because it can just sort of rebalance some of those chemicals so they can come back to a level playing field so we can do the work. But we don't want to be stuck on medication for the rest of our lives if we can help it. And so I'm up to the bit about medication because there's been a lot of research on medication too. And medicating what may be more of an existential disease rather than a biological one may be backfiring, making people much more likely to feel helpless and hopeless. And this is especially true given long-term consumption of the products that, the medications that can cause weight gain, type 2 diabetes, anxiety, sexual dysfunction, and sleep disorders, along with a host of different side effects. Some of them very similar to depression itself. So in short, current research suggests that antidepressants do not significantly outperform placebos, which is an interesting bit of information, isn't it? Depression is not a genetic predisposition. It is, it's not a biological thing. There's no real evidence that it's caused by our genetics, but it is caused by our neurobiology, and our lives can sometimes lack meaning, but it's not because we have an inherent Prozac deficiency. And a lot of things that we find that a lot of people think are hereditary tend to actually be familiar rather than hereditary, which means people have learnt those thinking styles from their family, their early family life. And we learn how to respond to different situations from the things that we witness when we're growing up as well. So depressive attitudes like pessimism, perfectionism, black and white thinking, learned helplessness, and so on, are learned rather than passed on through genes. So it's something that can actually give us a bit of hope, because it means that once we understand that, we can start to make some changes on it, because we know that we're not stuck with it for life. So none of this is to say that no depression does have, well, that depression doesn't have some biological roots. It's simply that the idea that most depression is the fault of biology that's gone haywire is not a credible one. Some antidepressants do seem to help people, as I said, and who can blame the doctors when they're overworked and overwhelmed with a caseload of human misery for prescribing medication? But as I said, depression's rising in our young people, and statistically, it's like 1,000% more prevalent than 50 years ago. And if this is biological, then what's causing our collective biology to shift so quickly and dramatically? Because it's social factors, it's living conditions. Depressive attitudes should never be ignored in favor of bad brain chemical idea, which is a theory that they're now saying is not actually as accurate as they thought, because there's no real evidence of it. But here's the thing, most depression can be treated psychologically, incorporating a detailed look at somebody's diet, exercise styles, and people don't have to feel that they're destined to carry a lifetime of a medical label for what is essentially an emotional condition. And so we don't need to fantasize about what depression is or dismiss the idea that it can lift and stay lifted without resorting to drugs. So there are some ideas that can help. And that's what we're here for today, because we really want to give you guys some tools and some information so you can start taking responsibility for working on your own health, your mental health, your well-being. So we want to understand that depression is a state of physical and mental exhaustion. Now, if you've ever had any depression, and you'll find that sometimes it can last for years, sometimes it can last for days, weeks, months. The average length of depression apparently is about 6 months, but most of the clients that I see are people that might have been on antidepressants for 10 or 15 years. And so we want to really just start finding some pathways out of that. So it really is mental exhaustion. And it comes about when too much negative, non-solution phase rumination leads to an excess in the REM sleep pattern. Now, REM is rapid eye movement. So most of you know that we've got alpha theta states that we're drifting into. And when we're going into sleep, we also have a part of our sleep cycle where we've got the rapid eye movement. But with depressed people, they tend to have a lot more time in that REM sleep pattern that exhausts that person and leads to further rumination. And rumination, of course, is the mind going over and over and over. And when depressed, people can get stuck and they need help to think differently and feel and act differently. So depressed people need to get out of the rut of getting get the rest that they need so that they're able to meet their fundamental needs, which is what Mother Nature says that we need. And we're going to call these the human givens. They're also another study was named these human needs as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and they're the things that we need to be happy and healthy. So we need to give and receive quality attention to and from other people. We need to heed that connection between the mind and the body. We need to have a sense of purpose and goals and a meaning in our life. We need to have a sense of community, and like we're making a bit of a contribution rather to others as well. We need to have challenges and to be creatively stretched. And we need to have intimacy, and that means a connection to at least one person that we feel like we can actually talk to on a really deeper level. So rumination, that mind going round and round, is a huge factor in depression too. And it also happens to be one of the things that maintains your depression. But hope, on the other hand, is really vital to recovery, because depression is all about negative expectations. And this explains why expecting an antidepressant drug might work seems to be the main factor that determines whether it will or it won't. Now, once we grasp these points about how depression works, we can then take some essential steps towards treating it. So the first thing we want to do is sort of describe what it is that's happening. And what they found was that if you can spend some time and talk about really what you're feeling, but doing it from the outside. So you might even write down, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling sad because this is going on. If you can sit down and write it down, they've done a lot of tests on this, and they found by writing it down or talking about that actual feeling and what's going on, it reduces that level of depression in the brain. It reduces the chemical reactions, but it also helps you to separate yourself from feeling like you are the depression. So you can start to see it from the outside. So we also get into this cycle of depression too. And it really is like one thing feeds the next. So we start to feel bad and we ruminate and we can't sleep. And then we worry that we can't sleep. And it just becomes this vicious cycle because we wake up tired the next day and it starts to spiral down. Now, here are some of the questions that will help you to determine whether you do have depression or not. And the first one is, do you always feel exhausted when you wake up in the morning? And the more you sleep, the more tired you are. So that, again, alludes to that rapid eye movement state where we're not getting that really deep, restful sleep. Next question, does anything tend to seem really black or white to you? All or nothing thinking, with no shades of grey in between. So what we know is that black or white thinking is really one of the big predictors of depression, but it also is really highly related to perfectionism. So if it's not all perfect, then it's a total disaster. That's the sort of thinking style we tend to get when we're feeling in that depressed state. Do you tend to dwell on the past or the current or the future events, spending a lot of time in your head rather than out doing things? So if you're constantly ruminating, what you're doing is kind of firing up that fire of negativity right throughout the day. You feel physically exhausted 1 minute and then really agitated the next. And probably if you've ever had depression, you probably ticked all of those boxes. So I'm just checking in with you now. Kim, does that relate to anything that you've been through in the past?
I had a breakdown about 11 years ago. So a few things. I was a shocking remunerator.
Yep.
Yeah, a few things.
Very good. So how are you feeling now, incidentally?
Oh, yeah, no, pretty good. Yeah. I have a thing when people get sick, it seems to bring a little bit of the anxiety back. You start to think, oh, is it this, is it that? But
Yep.
yeah, just how it is.
Fair enough. And Alicia, do those little things we just mentioned, do they sit with you?
Yeah.
You tick every one of those, don't you?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's just a sign of a thinking style that we want to really make some changes with. And I know it's not easy when you're kind of living in circumstances where things are not the way you'd like them to be. But we're just going to keep working in your head, beautiful girl, and moving things forward. So these questions highlight how depression is an easily understood pattern of experience. So I want you to always remember, Alicia, it's a pattern of thinking. It's not who you are. Okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. So one of the first signals of recovery people experience is they start to come out of that depression and they have this increased level of energy and a feeling of clarity and perspective, which is always a wonderful thing. And Kim, you would have noticed that too. Once you kind of turn the corner, you start seeing things through this different filter altogether. You start seeing things a whole lot more clearly. And so the next step is learning to relax. Now, people underestimate the power of relaxation. And when we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling depressed, it's really a stress brain. And that means we've got more adrenaline and more cortisol in our bloodstream. And one of the first things you'll find is when you calm your farm and you just relax, it can just help to level those chemicals out a whole lot more. And so if you're feeling exhausted, it is just one of the signs that you just need to make sure you've got time to rest and relax. And that doesn't mean trying to necessarily sleep when you might end up in that REM state of agitation sort of thing, or not getting the right level of sleep. But taking time out to rest and put your feet up, meditating, reading a book, all those things will really help to calm those hormones down. So the most wonderful techniques in the world will have little effect on the brain worn out by stress, anxiety, and exhaustion. So in that sort of a state that's flooded with the stress hormones, the brain struggles to take on new perspectives. It's like trying to see your reflection in a lake when a storm is raging. And for clarity perspective, we need calm. But all we have is distortion when we're in a state of depression. When people begin to learn to leave depression behind, they'll just start to feel better and they think more flexibly, and they'll also start to behave differently. So it's a two-way street. While depressive rumination leaves a sense of the unfinished business or unresolved problems, getting stuck into action that do have resolutions is really one powerful antidepressant. And do some tasks. Now, nobody feels like doing anything when they're depressed. They feel like going to bed or going to their room and locking the door and putting the covers over their head. But what they've studied and what they found is that just doing some little things that have a start, a finish, and an ending will give you a sense of satisfaction, and they'll also start to really strengthen that muscle in your brain that's starting to look at things through a new perspective too. And that means it could be something simple as I'm going to go for a walk. So you have to get up, you have to go for the walk, you have to come back, and it's got that beginning, middle, and end. So it means you've at least done that one thing. Or it might be, I'm going to clean out one drawer today or one cupboard. And just those little things can actually start to get the dopamine factor in your brain working again, so that it starts to help you think differently and realize that you can start to achieve things. So it doesn't have to be huge. It's just making those little changes. And so if your therapist or your doctor tells you, I want you to go for a walk, or I want you to do some activity, even though nobody likes to do it, what you always find is you feel a whole lot better once you have done it. So I urge you to set yourself some little tasks that you know that you can tick off, because it's just going to make you feel a whole lot more positive. Now, Why are we
Sometimes, but
depressed?
that can be really hard because you've got this little inner voice telling you that it's not safe to go for a walk. Or when I was sick, my inner voice was so loud. Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't help the situation because you know you should do things, but you just, your inner voice becomes so loud, just trying to trick you that,
And
certain
that's
things aren't
exactly what
safe.
it's doing. Yeah, it really is trying to trick you. So so it might mean that you just you change the thing that you want to do. So instead of going for that walk, if you just don't feel like you can get up and leave the house, because you've probably got a bit of agoraphobia as well, then you just break it down to something else that's small. And it might be you know, I'm going to do a drawing today that's going to make me feel better. Something that you can actually do with a start, a middle, and an ending. And you're right, because that inner voice, it's a naughty inner voice, but the voice really
It
comes from
is, and
some of
it
the
can get
programs from
so
our early
loud.
years. So true. So true. But as I was saying, a lot of that inner voice is really programs from our early childhood that we've had said to us, or we've witnessed other people speaking to each other in that way, and we've taken that on board. Because the first 7 years of your life, you're basically in hypnosis. It's a alpha theta brainwave pattern, so you get easily brainwashed in that state. And if somebody's yelling, whether it's at you or somebody else in the household, it means that they're in that emotional state, fight, flight, adrenaline, all the rest of it. They're more likely to say stuff they'd later regret. But because you then go into fear, it locks you straight into the subconscious mind. So it becomes this program. It's really interesting when you think about it. But this is how we get brainwashed to start then speaking badly to ourselves. And it's because if we've had that program, you're not good enough, and who do you think you are, and every time you raise your head, you're going to get knocked down, then after a while we start to believe that, and we go, I can't do it. I just can't do it. So it becomes this self-limiting program. And even though we're older, even at the age of 50 or 60, people are still operating out of that emotional brain from the first 7 years of their life. So this is why hypnosis does work so well, because you can drop that person down to the same state that they were programmed in, and then start to do some work at that level and start to change those programs. And if you've got a mind that ruminates, and see, there's different styles of anxiety and different styles of hypnosis too, because the rumination, it's prefrontal cortex, and the fight flight is the amygdala stuff. And it means that we'd have to have two different types of therapy. So if you're a ruminator, what we would want to do is give you some tools to imagine turning the volume down, and maybe even changing the voice to a silly voice or something, because if you can do that, then the subconscious it loses its hold over you, and you start to see it through a different filter. And we'll use whatever tools we can to start making some change in the way that we think, so that we don't come back into those patterns again. So does that make sense?
Yep.
Excellent. So there are 10 careful questions to identify the root causes. And I think if you've had this book already, you probably would have already read through this. The therapy is not just to discover where that problem's come from, because we can talk ourselves black and blue and go back to where it is, but until we actually do the work on the right level, it's not useful information. It's good to understand it, but it's not going to actually shift it. Because I have had thousands of clients come in and say, I've got depression, and I've been seeing a psychologist for 20 years, and every week we go over the same old stuff, but nothing changes. So the intellectual part of our mind wants to always understand stuff. That's 5 to 10%. But to get the change, we really got to get you into a nice state where we can have access to those parts of the brain where the pattern comes up. And with some people, when they're living in dysfunctional families, abusive families, all that sort of stuff, we can do a lot of work, but if they keep going back home to that same family, they get reprogrammed every time they go back. So it can be a real constant battle to help that person deal with what's going on there without letting it get under their skin. Because first option is, in a situation like that, is to get away from that family or to get away from that situation. So we want to make a change to the circumstances, but if we can't, then we've got to look at the whole thing in a whole different way. So we've got to shift our thinking about it. And so some people are never going to leave a dysfunctional family or an abusive relationship because they feel like they're captives. I don't know whether you've heard of the Stockholm Syndrome. And the Stockholm Syndrome came about when they found that they had people that had been kidnapped, and some of them had been kidnapped for years. They'd been sexually abused. They'd been, bashed from pillar to post. And when they were released, all they did was they wanted to defend that person that hurt them, because they'd just not seen anything else for 20 years, and that was their experience. And they would have almost died for that person. They kept saying, no, let me back, because they didn't know anything else. So it's like being in a cult when you get brainwashed. So our purpose is not just to find out where the problems come from, but to be actually able to make some changes when we're dealing with the emotions that come about from those sort of situations. So as I said, if we can't change circumstances, we've really got to work on those emotions to start to shift the way we start to think. So we don't see the depression as our label, but instead a pattern of thinking that we want to make some change to. So under what circumstances does that depression to begin? So people will often become depressed when circumstances change. And what that means is maybe you've lost your job, maybe you've gotten the flu, or you've gotten bad pain or whatever. I had a client named Margaret, and her depression began when she and her husband downsized to a new location in another part of the country, and she became depressed soon after they moved. And suddenly the friends that she had weren't there. And her community was gone. They were just sort of ripped away from her. And a part of the therapy was to really help her to connect with a local community, finding that little clue. Had we not realized that was one of the things that triggered the depression, then she might have stayed depressed. But what we did was give her some new directions in the therapy. And so what was going on for her was that her circumstances changed. So it's not all necessarily those early years, but let me say the early years set the stage for how we respond to changes as well. Next question, are you going through a tough transition? So if you've moved house or whatever, how are you coping with it? And if it's tough, well, for Margaret, moving away from her friends had that sense of community and security that was lost. And she just felt absolutely lost. And she'd also recently retired, and so she was finding it really hard, having lost a sense of meaning and purpose for her former work, which actually ticked a lot of those boxes, because it satisfied her sense of community and her sense of giving, and a sense of safety and that belonging to a group as well. So common life cycle transitions that we find can trigger depression, things like going away to university or leaving home. So my grandson's at university at the moment, and he took a little while to settle in. He did say he felt a bit lost when he first got there. And he's actually coming home today, which is awesome. He rang me last night. He's coming home, and he said, don't tell Evie, our 6-year-old granddaughter we're raising. And he said, because I want to surprise her. So he'll be home for a week, which will be awesome. So illness, your illness or somebody else close to you. And we all know what it feels like when we're feeling sick. We just don't want to get out of bed. We feel isolated. And if it's prolonged, it can really make you feel depressed. Loss of someone close, including the death of a pet. Now, I know Alicia's she's lost a few pets over the time I've seen her. And losing a pet's just like losing a person, really, because they become a part of your family. But also when we lose a person that's always been there for us, and they're not there any longer, that can really trigger a depressive episode as well, because of that loss, that sense of what's missing in our life. Having a new baby, well, a lot of people think it should be a time of joy, but if, Kim, have you got children?
Yes, I've got 2 adult children, so I experienced the my daughter leaving home, and yeah, that was devastating, but yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I've got 2 boys overseas and a daughter here, and so when the boys, if I remember when Scott went off to university, I said, "Oh, I'm so excited for you. You're going away and you're going to do all your study, and then you'll be home again." He goes, "Wait a minute, Mum, I'm not coming home." I went, "Yes, you are. You're just going away to school. You're coming home." And he said, "No, Mum, I'm leaving home and I won't be back." And it just broke me. I went, "Oh, I never thought of it like that." But now they're overseas. They've been over for 15 odd years, or for Scott, or 18 years or something, probably for Scott. And Nick has been probably 10 years. And we see them on Zoom all the time, or on Messenger video, and they do come home. Scott hadn't been home for 10 years, but he was home just before last Christmas, and Nick's coming home this Christmas. So it's awesome. And Nick was home recently as well. But those little things, as a mother, we just, it devastates us when we lose our babies. But we come to terms with it, and we learn to cope very well. Having a new baby, a lot of people think, oh, it's a great time, you've got a new baby, but your whole routine's out. You've got problems if you're breastfeeding, you've got washing, and there's this baby that's crying in the middle of the night, so you don't get a lot of sleep, for a lot of people anyway. So that's a thing that can really trigger that depressive cycle. Divorce and even marriage. And both of those things, if somebody's divorced, they've got so much they've got to filter through. They've got, property to split up, and sometimes it's a messy divorce. And sometimes people get married and it's not what they thought it was going to be. They thought it was going to be like on the movies, and carried over the threshold and everything roses. But it's just moving in with a new person can be a bit tricky when we don't really know each other that well sometimes. And there are lots of changes that we have to adapt to. Getting a new job can stress us out and make us feel depressed, because we've got all the new stuff we've got to learn. And incidentally, having, run fitness centers and employed, 23 people or whatever, what you find is you get better at employing people as well. But it does take about 2 years to train somebody up to the right level where they can really feel proficient in their job. So getting a new job can mean that you've got the next couple of years, you've got to find your feet and get really good at it. It can be stressful. Losing our job again is another thing that can be really stressful, because we lose our loss. It's a loss of identity. And I know when I left the RSL Health and Fitness Centre, I lost my job because I blew the whistle on someone dipping into the till who was drinking buddies with the new secretary manager. So that's another story altogether. But I do remember crying for about 3 months, saying, how can they do this to me? I did the right thing. And they've thrown me out the door after me working there for 9.5 years. And my husband came up to me after the time I'd been just feeling so miserable about it. How can they, this unjustifiable thing? And he said to me, look, I understand why you're upset. It's terrible what they did. I can't believe they stabbed you in the back like that. But could you just tell me, how long would you like to cry for? I said, what? And he said, look, I don't have a problem with it. Could you just give me a bit of a rundown on how long do you think you'd like to cry for, so that we can work out when we're going to start getting back into our life again? And I went, they're not going to get one more day out of me. And that one question turned me around. So I went, boom, they don't know who they're dealing with. Now, interestingly enough, 18 months later, because we had a band for 18 months, 15 years as well, but 18 months later, we were playing at a wedding at the RSL Club, and I came out of the bathroom and I ran smack into the secretary manager, the new fellow that had been responsible for me losing my job. And he saw me and he went, ugh. And I just went over and gave him a big hug. And I said to him, look, Jeffrey, I understand that you made that decision based on the information that you had at the time. You really didn't even know me, but I want to thank you for that, because I'm the last man standing. I would never have left that job. I would have been the one that was holding that fort up no matter what. But you guys weren't spending any money fixing machinery or any of that stuff. And I just said, had you not thrown me out of that job, I'd still be in it. But now I feel like I'm doing something so much better with my life. And by you throwing me out, that was a gift, because now I've learnt Reiki, and I'm on my healing path, and I'm helping other people. I'm doing something that feels like it's worthwhile to me. So thank you. And he just looked at me and he went, "That's really decent of you." I said, "No, you made the decision with the information you had. You didn't know who I was, but I want to thank you for that." And later on, I went into one of the occupational safety and health lady called me in to come and have a catch up with her in between our singing sets. And I walked in, it was the annual general meeting for the whole board. And I had the president come running over to me and 4 of the board members saying, "Oh, love, how are you getting on? We've been missing you. Why did you leave? We've been missing you so much." And I looked up and I saw the secretary manager with his mouth open, and I went, "Touche, there is closure there. I can let this really let this go now." But what often feels like a devastating time in our life can actually be a new beginning. So I want everybody to start to understand that the things that we think are really hard, sometimes one door is closing because there's another door that needs to be opened. So we've got to always try to find a way to look at things through a new filter. And retirement is the next one too. And my husband has really not worked so much in the last 3 years since COVID, because he teaches in preschools and he wasn't able to really get in. He's done a little bit more work, but he has now just applied for retirement, and he's on my case that I should retire as well. And I'm saying, "But I love doing what I'm doing." And he said, "Well, semi-retire, because we've got a nearly 7-year-old to raise." And so I'm looking at that possibility too. I said to him, "I don't know if I could ever retire. I don't know if I want to, because I've got too much I've still got to get done in this world. I've got too many people to work with and help." And he promised me if I decided to retire, that he would let me keep working. So it's interesting. But again, a retirement can be a feeling like we've lost our identity. So these are little different transition times. But what I often find is when people get through them and they look back, they go, "Best thing that ever could have happened." So Kim, how did you experience some of your things that probably would have made you hit the wall, but you got through them, didn't you?
Yeah, well, particularly my breakdown, I think it probably happened for a reason, so that I would slow down and change my lifestyle and all the rest. So in hindsight, it was a good thing, though it was extremely hard.
Oh, for sure.
Same with, my daughter leaving home. That's been very traumatic on me because we were close. But you've got to let them have their lives, and you've got to move on. And it's, in hindsight, you've got different things you focus on, and it makes you stronger.
Excellent. And of course, we have our children so that we can give them the strength and the confidence and the knowledge so that we can set them free and they can become their own person. So we understand that, but as mums, it's not that easy, is it?
No,
but the thing
not
is,
easy
then,
at all.
but then we get to look at them and go, "Oh my God, you are such an accomplished adult now. Now that you've been out on your own, you learned to cook and clean and all the rest of it." I mean, when my boys went overseas, when they went to university, I worried about them. I knew they were out partying a fair bit of the time too. But they've gotten through, and they're really good people. And even Coop, my Cooper, who's 21, who's our grandson, who we've also raised, who's coming home this afternoon. I've done a bit of hypnosis on him I did some on Tuesday and some on Thursday. And last night he rang me and he said, "Grandma, I've never felt so balanced. I've never felt so good. And I can't thank you for all the hypnosis you've done on me over the years." Because we've got a daughter who's got drug and alcohol problems and has had for 30 years. And so there's been a lot of stress there, obviously, but the kids, they've always been our function, to keep the kids safe and keep them happy. And he's been through a lot of stuff, but he's come out the other end. And it's just constant. When an issue comes up, he'll ring me and say, "Grandma, book me in," and we'll do some work. And last night we did some work on, he also thinks he might be bipolar. He's had a diagnosis of that, but we worked on being balanced and looking for the signs and eating well and doing your exercise. And this morning you just said, "I've never felt so good." So that's what we want.
Nice.
That's exactly what we want. Yeah. Okay. Difficult transitions can cause us to be overly ruminating in our heads. So it really is about just finding ways to look at things differently. So what is going on in our head is the thing. So we have this self-talk, this voice that's constantly putting us down or holding us back or telling us we can't do stuff. And that's only a voice, but it's not who we are. And that's the thing that we need to understand. So these are things that can lead us to understanding what's the way our thinking patterns. And what do we worry about? What do we ruminate about? Do you ruminate on disappointments or fears or unmet needs or the welfare of others, of loved ones? We need to know in order to help address the painful and exhausting inner dialogue. So that's why when we do work, we kind of we can't just do a shotgun effect for everybody. We want to address each person's individual things that are going on in their life that we can start to shift, like the turning the volume down or changing the voice or questioning that voice. So when a voice comes up and says, you're no good, well, we're going to say, in what situation am I no good? And is that always? So we can ask some different questions that can start to lead to some helpful answers that can take us out of that pattern of believing the negative thoughts, because they're just a thought and thoughts can be changed. Fourth question, are you having an existential crisis? So that's your breakdown, really. Or is it because, it might be somebody's died, we're going through bereavement. Somewhere I've written, sometimes a breakdown can be a breakthrough. And probably, Kim, you found that. Because it gives you a chance to get off the merry-go-round and look at your life differently and go, is this working for me? And if not, what do I need to change? So then there are other things like the physical side of depression, your diet, your sleep patterns, and your activity levels as well. Because we know things like sugar will increase your adrenaline, so that can make you worry a whole lot more. Margaret stopped going to her daily walks, and she got into the habit of staying up late watching the news, and it was mostly depressing stuff she was watching anyway. So these little things, like limiting how much news we watch, they're things that can really just help. Like, I really don't watch the news. I figure if there's something bad going on, someone's going to tell me about it. I try not to watch it too much. Most of the things that we watch on TV are kids' cartoons at the moment with this 7-year-old, and then we just turn the damn thing off. Or my husband might watch a bit of it, and then he'll just say, oh, this is what's going on. Yep, thanks for that. No worries at all. But it really means that we've got to look at all these things when it comes to the chemicals that go to make up our body as well. And when we're constantly watching things that are violent, like the news or wars and all the rest of it, it can also increase the cortisol and the adrenaline in our bloodstream, put us into fight or flight about stuff that we actually can't have any impact on. So it's really about putting our energy into stuff that we can have an impact on. So with our diet, Margaret told me that she mostly ate ready-made meals, TV dinners, or sometimes just packets of chips and lollies and ice creams and chocolates and things like that. And really, a good diet is, eating those 3 meals a day and protein with each of those meals to stabilize your blood sugar, which then stabilize your moods. And that's really what we want to do. And so, are your meds depressing you? So some of the drugs that can contribute to depression include things like statins, beta blockers. And so the statins are for the blood pressure. Beta blockers is for your heart. Anticonvulsants, so for people that might be epileptic. Parkinson's disease medication. Corticosteroids for injuries, hormonal medication. So a lot of these things can actually cause depression or increase your level of depression as well. Because all of those things have side effects. Is your past depressing you? So if we're constantly focusing on all the stuff that has happened in the past, it can set us up for learned helplessness, so we don't feel like there's any other way to move forward out of that pain body, because we just feel like we're constantly feeling helpless and powerless. And then we can make a faulty link between things from the past and things that might feel similar but are not actually similar in the future. So again, it can limit us from making changes and from taking risks and stepping outside our comfort zone. Learned helplessness produces what we call an emotional overgeneralization. So we talk in all or nothing terms again. We say everything's ruined rather than this little part of my life is not working, but these other parts are. Is the current situation depressing you? So the word worry comes from the Old English word that means to strangle. And certainly worrying feels like we're being suffocated. We feel like we're being strangled. And we often worry about situations that seem impossible to solve. We worry about other people when it's their job to help themselves. It's not our responsibility. We worry about the unjust situations in the world and about being bullied or misrepresented, about money, about relationships. So decreasing our worry, to do that, we want to help. Well, my job is to help you either deal with the situation or stop worrying about it so much. Because if you can't change it, then that worry is just useless waste of time and energy. So it is about then focusing back on what you can do that's going to make you feel better and sort of stepping outside what's going on around you. Or is your overall approach to life holding you back? And that can be, again, those thinking styles that we've learned through our families. Is your perfectionism depressing you? That's the black or white thing, thinking. So if it's not perfect, it's not good enough. Is somebody depressing you? So what we know is if somebody in the family has a mental health issue or they've got depression, it's kind of catchy. Or if they're angry all the time, it's a catchy sort of thing. It's called fusing. If someone's had a really bad day at work and they come home and they're yelling at their wife and then the kids are all anxious and stressed and hiding and all the rest of it, it just fuses that emotion through the whole family. So Margaret told me that she had one friend who insisted that they should meet up 3 times a week and have a cup of tea. And she said it just depressed the hell out of her. She said she didn't even like the woman, but she didn't want to let her down. She didn't want to seem rude. So she said, all right, I'll go. And Kim's smiling and nodding. So do you have a friend like that?
Oh, yeah. As your parents get older, they get very self-involved, don't they? And they can be very down and negative and yeah.
So, I had my mum, when after Dad died, she had depression probably for 10 years. Now she's been gone for quite a few years now, but I just decided I was going to start to break her habit. And she would start ringing me up at night time and she would start being really negative about her friends. And I just start laughing at her and say, come on, Mum, these are your friends. You better lighten up. And then I started saying, oh, sorry, Mum, there's someone at the door. Got to go. Love you. Hung up. Sorry, Mum, the peas are boiling over. I've got to go. Love you. Hang up. Every time she started on that pathway, I cut it. It's called, it's just called pattern breaking or pattern interrupting. And, it probably took about a month and she just stopped doing it. And then she rang me and she said, Carol, I've just realized I'm happy again. I found my joy. I went, oh, Mum, I've been waiting for this. I'm so proud of you. And I think it was even before I was doing hypnosis, really. Maybe no. I had already done hypnosis, but it wasn't an actual planned thing. I just thought, no, I'm not going to let her keep doing this. And it just made her really just become aware of what was going on in her own head. And then she started going out and, connecting with people and all the rest of it. So that was a real blessing. So yes, our parents, they can drive us crazy. So we've got to give ourselves some immunity from that sometimes. And sometimes even using our imagination to imagine a bubble around us when we go in there. And on an energy level, it actually works. And it is, it's putting up a protective coating, a shield around you, so that when they say stuff, you can just imagine it bouncing off and going right back to where it's come from. And you just smile and you go, yes, really. And, there's a phrase that this spiritual guru many years ago came up with. He's passed over now. And he said, what you think about me is none of my business. And he said, my wife and I have got a really good thing going now. We have this little phrase we say. Now, what we're really thinking is that may be your opinion, but I don't have to agree with you. And then we just smile and say, thank you for sharing. So if somebody is giving you a hard time, rather than argue with them, because they're never going to agree with you when they're in that state, just smile and say, thank you for sharing, or I'll think about that. Thank you for sharing. But what you're really thinking is, that's your opinion. I don't have to agree with you. Thank you for sharing. And so Wayne Dyer said, we've got it down to such a great art now. My wife the other day just looked at me and went, thank you for sharing.
It's a bit like Mrs. Brown's Boys.
Oh, definitely. That's a great show, isn't it? And so that way we can kind of get a bit of a sense of humor up about it as well, so it doesn't stick to us so much. And we've just got to find tactics that if we're in that kind of environment with people that are constantly negative, we've just got to go, thank you for sharing. I'm going to go out and, you know, hang the washing out or pat the dog, or I'm just going to go and do some drawing, or do some play some music or whatever. And incidentally, music's a really good one for lifting your moods as well. But yes, some people, doesn't matter what you try to do to lift them up, you cannot change them. So you've got to get to a point where you go, I'm just not going to put my energy into that, because it's not my job to fix you. You've got to fix yourself. Or you can live in your own head and be miserable, but I'm not going to let that bring me down. I'm just going to choose to live my best life from here on in. So now we're at some self-help tips to assist with depression. And these are tips that do really work, and establishing a routine is one of them. So, you know, a lot of people with depression just don't want to get out of bed in the day, and they really have no routines. They really don't have any structure, so they don't feel like they've got a purpose. So if we can set ourselves up some routines that can really just get us, even if we don't feel good, we're going to get up, because we know that once we get up and start moving, things do actually feel a whole lot better. So daily schedule, create a daily schedule to provide some structure and predictability. That way we know what's coming next. Small goals. So this is what we were saying before. We don't have to go for that walk around the block. Just set a small goal, something, one little thing you want to do, something that's achievable to give you a sense of accomplishments. So that's really what it's all about. Exercising regularly. Now, physical activity engages engaging in regular physical activity like walking, jogging, or yoga that can boost the endorphins and improve moods. And consistency, aim for at least 30 minutes of exercise most days of the week. Now, statistically, even, 5 minutes is enough to start boosting your moods. There's a psychologist in New York who doesn't medicate his patients. He takes them for a jog around the park. But movement itself, I want you to always realize that our body's like this big beaker of chemicals that needs to be stirred. And it doesn't have to be hard. It's just about getting the body moving, because it's going to stir those chemicals up. It also means that when you're exercising, you're using the other part of the brain. So instead of being in that constant rumination, you're actually activating a different part of the brain. So you start to calm things down again. So it doesn't matter what the activity is. It could be anything at all. It might be stepping up and down the back step for a couple of minutes. It might be doing a few push-ups on the wall, or doing a couple of squats or dips, but just to get the body moving. Movement itself is just one of the best things for depression. And if you could do it outside in the sunshine also improves our endorphins. Healthy eating. So the balanced diet is, we are what we eat. The food goes into our body to create the chemicals. So eat a balanced diet with plenty of fruits, vegetables, lean protein, and whole grains. And don't skip meals, because what we find is, if we do skip meals, it drops our blood sugar levels really low. And then we start getting these cravings for sugary foods or carbohydrates, which if we eat the sugar and we have the caffeine, it'll send the blood sugar up again with the sugar. Then the body overproduces insulin, drops it back down again. And we have these little mood swings. But if we have a bit of protein with each meal and we don't skip those meals, it's going to stabilize our blood sugar a whole lot more, and mean that we can feel a whole lot calmer throughout the day. Sleep hygiene. Go to bed and wake up at the same time every day if you can. Sleep environment. Create a restful environment for sleep that's free from distraction. So we know that if you're surfing the internet before you go to bed, then that's another thing that's going to stop your sleep pattern. If you've got the blue lights on that can come from phones, that again interrupts the serotonin and the melatonin in the brain. And it means that we really want to shut down all those things at least an hour before we go to bed. And there are a few other things if sleep's a problem too. I've got a sleep hygiene list somewhere. I might pop that in our book in the next incarnation of this, which will go up in the next day or two. So we can just give you some things, some little hints to help you sleep better. Mindfulness meditation, mindfulness practices, and that might be just being fully present where you are while you're eating a meal. And Eckhart Tolle is one of the, who wrote the book, The Power of Now. He's one of the great exponents for mindfulness. And it really does help you stay in the present moment, because most of the things we worry about are about the past or the future. And so if we can be fully present, it means that we can kind of start training the mind not to focus on what's happened or that fear of what could go wrong. Meditation, regular meditation can help calm the mind and those hormones as well, and improve our emotional regulation. And I do meditate every day. I probably do have ADHD. I had a psychologist a long time ago when I worked at Cobra Street Centre with 3 psychologists, the bigwig who came up from Sydney. I had a 5-minute conversation with her, and she said, "Carol, you do know you've got ADHD, don't you? Because I've got it and I can see those signs in you." I went, "Yeah, well, it's working for me." And I thought, well, I can have a lot of things all simmering on the pot at the same time, because, as I said, I'm the chair for Reiki Australia. At one stage, I was also doing the ops manager's job, the executive manager's job, the marketing manager's job, doing the web. I'm still doing the website now, and I was doing the newsletter. Luckily, we now have a project manager, and now I'm moving everything over, so she's doing operations managing too. But I help her with all the stuff, and so I had a lot of stuff on my plate. Reiki Australia's got 3, 4 social media pages that I was helping with, and I still help with from time to time. And I've got my own, I've got my business one, my personal web Facebook page. I've got an Abundant Spirit group with 2,000 people in it. I've got a Reiki group. I've got an oils group, which I don't really get into as much either. But that is a lot of stuff I've got going on. And I'm raising this little girl, and I run my business here. So if I didn't meditate, I think I would go crazy. And that for me is stilling the mind at night time and just sitting, sometimes 5 minutes, and just breathing and being fully present. And I know it just resets things in my brain, and I sleep better when I do it. And I just let the worries of the day just disappear. And when I wake up the next morning, I spend a few minutes and I do Reiki on myself, because again, that's going to regulate my brain chemicals and help me stay calm and relaxed. And then I get out of bed and I go like a bat out of hell, trying to get this little kid out of bed and get her ready for school. But I know the mindfulness and I know the meditation is something that's really been such a lifesaver for me. And I didn't really meditate till probably 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, 19 years ago or something, when I went to a Vipassana retreat in the Blue Mountains, which is 10 hours of meditation a day for 10 days, and you're not allowed to talk. Now, even Kim knowing me for a short period of time, I'm a talker. So it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life, but the best. By day 5, things, my mind stopped. And that was just such an amazing thing for the rest of the session, the rest of the time, the next 5 days. I was just in that state of peace, which was something I had not experienced really before. Connecting with others. So this is one of our Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need social support. We need people. And that means reaching out to friends and family for support and connection, and support groups. So maybe even consider joining a support group of individuals experiencing depression, because sometimes just talking to somebody else that's going through the same sort of crap can make us feel like, you know what, we're all in it together. I'm not the only one going through this. There's people I can talk to about it who actually understand me. Limiting alcohol and avoiding drugs. So as I said, our daughter has had this drug and alcohol problem for many, many years. She has never let me do any work with her. But I know that this cycle of addiction, and you know, I know that this is the thing that is holding her depression at bay. And I know she feels bad, so she'll use drugs or whatever. She feels like she's got no energy and she'll use drugs. But until she actually deals with the cause of her stuff, probably not much is going to change. We love her and we're always encouraging her, and we still see her every week. We see her and just love her. But each person's got to take responsibility for their own issues so they can do the work and do the healing. And we know alcohol is one of the biggest depressants on the brain. It'll actually depress the brain stem, which is one of the reasons people can die from alcohol, is because it actually stops their vital organs. It stops the connection. It stops them from breathing. So not a good thing. Everything in moderation, I would say, including moderation. But people often get onto that pathway. And I had a client yesterday who said when she was younger, she went down the drug and alcohol path. And she said, I thought it just made me have, feel happy, and I was laughing and I had all these great friends. But then I realized they're not actually my real friends. And the best thing I could have ever done was get off that cycle of addiction. Healthy alternatives. So find other things to do, like exercise or hobbies. And it might be photography, and it might be painting, it might be drawing, it might be sewing, it might be crocheting, it might be sticking yourself out in the sunshine and doing the gardening. All those little things can build resilience. Engage in enjoyable activities. Again, hobbies and interests that I just mentioned. They're wonderful things that make us feel more positive. And again, they can they give us a start, a middle, and an ending. Practice gratitude. Now, something else that wasn't in your manual, I've just added something yesterday, the 3 good things. So gratitude, Oprah came up with a gratitude diary many years ago. And what she said was write down 5 things a day that you're grateful for, and then at night time read that. And over 21 days, it will shift your focus to looking for things to be grateful for. And in my Abundant Spirit group that I mentioned on Facebook, and Kim, if you're not in it, you should jump in, because we're about to start the 21 Days of Abundance next month with meditations in the morning, which you can listen to at any time of the day. But there's a whole list of things that you can do to start putting your focus more on what you want. And sometimes we do 21 days of gratitude in there as well. So it's a group where I just put lots and lots of positive stuff in there to just try to help as many people as I can, by motivating them and giving them extra tools and stuff I've paid for over the years. If I've bought programs that I've found that were really helpful, if I can stick them in that group, that's where they're going. I think I've got the silver method that I paid $300 or $400 for. I think that might be going at the end of July as well. So the gratitude thing is really huge. I know I had another client years ago who had breast cancer and had a mastectomy, and she said to me, Carol, I saw this thing on the gratitude diary. I saw this on YouTube, and on Oprah, and she said I started doing it, and when I started, I felt like my life was ending. I thought I was going to die and all the rest of it. And she said, I'm still doing this years later, and I now feel like I'm the luckiest woman on this planet. I feel so grateful. And she said that was the one thing that turned her life around. So positive focus on the positive aspects of our life, no matter how small they are. And the 3 good things, this is a study I read about a couple of days ago. So that's why it went up here yesterday. I added it. And what this woman said was writing down 3 things, just 3 good things in your day, and your part in them. So I had a shit day today, but there were 3 good things. I patted my dog, and I played with my daughter or whatever, or I cooked this lovely breakfast and I really enjoyed it. So if you start doing that, even 3 good things, but they actually had follow-up studies on it. And she said, just do it for 14 days. Research showed that after 4 or 5 days, people tended to feel happier, and they started to train their brain to shift from focusing on the negatives to the positives. And research then showed that after the 14 days, people tended to have less burnout and depression, a better work-life balance, less conflict at school, work, and home, a higher level of happiness. But the cool thing was that these results lasted for up to 6 months. So I thought that was absolutely awesome. And that's one little thing that has a start, a middle, and an ending that everybody could be doing, just writing 3 good things in our day. So that might be your challenge, Kim and Alicia, to start on that. And anybody else that's watching this, and whether you've got depression or not, I think it's a great idea to just start to intentionally shift our focus so that we are scanning for the positives, not just the problems that keep rising from day to day, minute to minute, whatever. Cognitive behavior therapy or techniques, so challenge those negative thoughts and identify and challenge negative thought patterns. So we really want to start looking at our emotions from the outside rather than feeling stuck inside them. And I've got a technique we're going to use in our little demo today to start doing that as well. But challenge them. Just say, is that true? Is that always true? Under what circumstances does that pattern happen? And really start to challenge the pattern as a thing that's separate from who you are. So you don't say, I am depressed. You say, I am doing depression. You don't say, I am angry. You say, I'm doing anger. So you sort of start to see it from a different perspective, and it can then lose its hold and its grip on you, that tenacious grip that it tends to hold on to people. Positive affirmations. So use positive affirmations to replace negative self-talk. And there's people like Louise Hay, who was a founder of affirmations, and she was a lady who passed away a few years ago at the age of about 93, but she'd been a counselor for more than 50 years, and she found that everybody that had the same emotional issues had the same physical issues. And on my website, on my mini-blitz page, there's a place there you can download the Louise Hay book. Somebody typed it up and put it on the internet, and I found it. So once I found it, I kept it and I share it around. So we can actually say, when I've got this physical problem, then this is the emotional connection that's going on in my brain. So it was a lady that had been molested from the age of about 5, and she later developed, I think it was some sort of vaginal cancer or uterine cancer it might have been. And she cured that only with using affirmations. And she's the queen of affirmation. She's amazing. And she's got hundreds of books, but also recordings where she might just do an hour of nothing but positive affirmations. And that's how she cured her physical body. So there's a lot to be said. Affirmations, if we constantly repeat the same positive things, it sinks into the subconscious eventually. Hypnosis is just a faster version of affirmations, really, in my book, for a lot of things as well. Seeking professional help. So therapy. So most people that have had depression for a period of time do seek out some therapy, and that might be with a counselor, it might be with somebody like me, it might be medication as well on that list. So therapy, consider talking to a therapist or a counselor for professional support or lifeline. I might put those numbers on the bottom of this book and pop that back up again too. Hypnotherapy, work with somebody who understands depression, has the tools to help you delve into the subconscious to begin to work directly with those emotions. Medications, so discuss with your doctor or your healthcare provider if the medications might be beneficial. Sometimes they need to be tweaked, they need to be changed as well. They're definitely not right for everybody, but for some people, they are necessary to level out the chemical imbalance so that we can start doing some real work to help make some lasting changes. Self-compassion. Now, this is a big one because most of you know that when you're feeling down like that, you beat yourself up. That critical little voice goes, oh, you're useless. Why can't you get this done? Why can't you get out of bed? Why can't you go for that walk around the block? So be kind and be compassionate and treat yourself the way you treat somebody you loved. And that's the biggest thing that we forget. We're so much harder on ourselves than we are on anybody else. Work on your own self-esteem and confidence. Remember that every time we overcome a small or a large challenge, it increases our comfort zone, reaffirming that we can do things, but it also increases our confidence. Most of the negative programs come from other people who don't even know us, so don't buy into it. You are good enough, just as you are, and you deserve to be treated with love, kindness, and respect. So forgiveness as well, and that is forgiving ourselves for any perceived shortcomings that we might have, and treating ourselves with kindness. Mindful breathing. So deep breathing is one of the practices that we use for anxiety as well. So we could use that in our anxiety workshop. We talked about 3-5 breathing or 7-11 breathing. All of those techniques actually have an effect on our physical body. They trigger the parasympathetic nervous system in the brain and the vagus nerve, and that triggers the parasympathetic system, so it starts to calm things down. So we just breathe in and out like a deep sigh, and that in itself will calm things down. Breath awareness, focus on your breathing and bring your attention to the present moment. That when you do that, stay informed, so educate yourself about depression so you can understand your symptoms better and find effective coping strategies. Resources. Use books, on resources, and support groups for additional information and support. Don't forget, we've got things like YouTube. I find YouTube is absolutely amazing for getting information. When I started on the board of Reiki Australia, the then operations, the board said, we've just got this quote for $4,000 to fix up the website. There's all these broken links. We've got a list of them, and they quoted $4,000. And I said, are you kidding me? Could you find out what platform it is? And they said, what's a platform? And I said, just find out if it's WordPress or not, because I've got a WordPress website and I have a web person, but I could probably fix the broken links if you throw them to me. So they gave me the list and they gave me login details, and I got on. It took about an hour and I got them all fixed. But then once I did that, then the operations manager messaged me and she said, oh, that's really good. Could you now, could you do a new web page up for me? And I want a slider across the top, and I want blah, 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 blah. And I want some YouTube videos in there. And I just said to her, are you not aware that I am not actually a web person? I've got no idea about doing stuff like that. And in fact, I pay somebody to do my website. And she said, you'll find it on YouTube. And I went, okay, fine. And I did. And so now I do all the web stuff, on the web page for Reiki Australia, and I do my own as well. But again, I've still got my web person for the things that I use when I stuff it up or I lose something. But it really is understanding that there are lots of resources out there that can really help us to move forward. So rather than staying stuck and feeling bad, if we start searching, again, that empowers us because we're actually taking responsibility for our own healing process as well. Limit stress, because stress magnifies that all or nothing, black or white thinking as well. And identify the sources of stress and find a way to minimize them if you can. Relaxation techniques, practice relaxation techniques like progressive muscle relaxation and guided imagery. They're things that can really help to drop that cortisol in your brain and the adrenaline and give you a reset. And when the chemicals calm down, then you start to find that you can focus more on solutions rather than just the problems. So hypnotherapy is often used in conjunction with other treatments like CBT or cognitive behavior therapy, EMDR, which I've just shoved that in last night as well, medication, lifestyle changes, and holistic approaches to our mental health as well. Hypnosis is a powerful therapeutic tool that can help alleviate the stress, anxiety, panic attacks, and post-traumatic stress by inducing deep relaxation, accessing and reframing negative thought patterns, enhancing coping mechanisms, improving our sleep, building self-esteem and confidence. And its effectiveness in addressing these conditions makes it a valuable tool in addition to comprehensive mental health treatment plans. So combining things. Now, this, I've just left that from my last manual. So if you have looked at the last manual, you'll get a chance to read through this. I'm not going to go over it again because I've talked about it already. Top of the iceberg is like the conscious mind, 5 to 10%. Bottom is the subconscious and the unconscious mind. Together, they are 90 to 95%. The middle part here is the water level is the critical faculty, and that's like the doorway that says what's going to go into the subconscious belief system and what's not. So if your subconscious says you're not good enough and somebody says, you're an amazing person, this gate goes, yeah, right, I can't quite believe it. But if if they said you're a horrible person, the gate would open and all that stuff would go in to back up your belief about that you're not good enough. So when we do hypnosis, we're just going underneath that water level. That's all. We're going under the gate. So back onto the process. In hypnosis, we do an induction. So we put you into that nice relaxed state. Then we deepen that. Then we give the therapeutic suggestions, and then we wake you up. And so the way it works is deep relaxation accesses the subconscious mind. It gives us more coping mechanisms, improves our sleep, reduces panic attacks, builds self-esteem and confidence. Now, the other thing that I haven't done in our workshops is EMDR. And that is eye movement desensitization and reprogramming. Have you guys heard of EMDR?
Kind of.
Okay, cool. Alicia, have you heard of this one?
Yeah, a little.
Excellent. So one of the reasons I thought I'd throw this in is so that you'll have it as a backup plan as well. And I don't think this is in your current manual, but it will be, as I said, once I put this back up again. And what they found, in fact, was that when we're walking through the jungle, our eyes are constantly scanning the horizon. But what that does is it brings us out of the fight or flight, and it brings us into the present moment awareness. And doing that movement, they say if you're feeling stressed, go for a walk. But if you can't do the movement, doing the eye movement will work just as well to increase your dopamine and reduce your cortisol and adrenaline, which is really quite amazing. It quietens and calms the amygdala at the back part of the brain. So doing that desensitizes our responses, and it makes us less reactive rather than when we react when somebody says something, we might argue back with them. But when we do this technique, it can really calm things down really quickly. It uses lateral eye movements for about 10 to 30 seconds while picturing an event from the past or the present, and it quietens and calms the amygdala and increases our dopamine in the brain, as I mentioned. So we're going to do this in a moment. She looks like she's going, hey, man. And I put the picture there too. Combines therapy and eye movement or other types of stimulus like sounds or tapping. Helps access the process unresolved traumatic memories. Treats post-traumatic stress, anxiety, mood and substance use disorders. And so we're going to do a little bit of that. Now, we did do some tapping in our last session. Kim, you weren't in that anxiety one, were you?
No, I did watch the replay and
did you try the tapping?
Yeah,
oh,
I did.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And did you find that it helped?
Yeah, I like the tapping. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, there's millions of people use tapping these days too, because it gives you quick access to those meridian points. I don't think I had this picture here in the anxiety one, so I have put it here now. So it's where the tapping points are on the hands, so we can be doing it there. The center of the head, the inside of the eyes, the stomach meridians here, just below the nose, below the chin, and actually here too, it's not even on there, I don't think. Yes, it is. Below the collarbone, the kidney points and spleen points as well. And we work with affirmations, so we can say, even though my life is sad or depressing, I still love and approve of myself. Even though I'm struggling with relationships in my family or my outside my life, I love and approve of myself. Even though my workload is overwhelming, we can just kind of work through those, and that will help to reduce the stress level too. So we do a number 0 to 10, work out where we are. Then we bring up that emotion that's really driving us crazy, or that event that's really been upsetting us. Then we tap on that. And then again, we'll measure that at the end. The same as with the eye movement, we want to just make sure that we score it before we start, so we can see the difference once we move through it. And then if those emotions are still there, we just repeat the process till they come right down to a much more manageable level. So EFT, think of the issue that's bothering you. For example, it could be something you feel, sometimes you might be feeling anxious or sad about. Measure how that issue makes you feel. Rate how bad you feel on a scale of 0 to 10. Score of 0 means you don't feel so bad, and 10 means really bad. Write down that number. Create a statement that describes the issue, followed by a statement of self-acceptance. So even though I feel anxious about my work today, I deeply and completely accept myself. Or even though my partner broke up with me, I deeply and completely accept myself. Or even though my life is out of control, I feel depressed and hopeless, I love and accept myself. So we tap repeatedly on those different points. We just keep going around through the body, as you saw in the last video. And there are the points again. And then we do that score again. Now, there's a new technique that I'm just putting in this book called the spinning technique. And Alicia, you haven't done this one either. And it's an NLP spin technique created by Richard Bandler, John Overdurf, or Dr. David Schneider. We don't know which one of them really created it, so we're just giving credit to all of them. And Dr. Schneider said, if you can point to where you feel something, you can change it. Now, what I often find with clients, if they say, I'm feeling really anxious or really sad or whatever that is, I'll get them to close their eyes and I'll say to them, check in with your body, where are you feeling that? And they go, it's the throat or the chest, or it's the stomach or solar plexus or whatever. So we can generally feel those sensations in our body, because what we also know scientifically is that when we have a certain emotion, different chemicals will go to different parts of the body as well, or will tense up different parts of the body. And that's pretty unique. And it's pretty standardized right across different borderlines. You'll find that people experience the same emotions in the same parts of the body. Interesting stuff. And so if we can point to it, say I'm feeling sad, maybe my marriage is broken up, and I'd probably be feeling that in my heart. And then I'd go, what number is that? It might be a 10. And I want to just then ask myself, which direction is that moving in? And that's an interesting thing, because if we can start to go, well, it feels like it's kind of moving in this direction. And this is a submodality. It's the way that our mind starts to think. Then we want to imagine pulling it out of our body and looking at it still spinning in that direction, and then imagine it spinning back the other direction. And I don't know how this works, but it does. And you go round and round, speed it up, and then imagine putting it right back into that same place. I know it's bizarre, so we're going to do that very shortly. And then what you find is that the number reduces. You feel a whole lot better. And I don't know why it works or how it works, but it does. And I guess it's because we're looking at it from a different perspective. We're just shifting the mind's way of viewing some of those emotions that we've got. And so here are some pictures. So we can also imagine that it's got a color. Imagine pushing it out from the body, become aware of it, change the color or change the direction, push it back in again. And all those steps are there. Now, havening, I've also just put in, and havening is a technique that I've used before with you, Alicia, and it really is about saying those positive words and imagining that you're somewhere safe and saying, I'm safe, all those sort of things, where we're stroking the arms and sometimes stroking the face. And again, it just changes the sensitization. Now, the scale of consciousness we've mentioned before in some of our other books. And if we look at some of these emotions, and I've got that down here a bit bigger, I think. Where is it? Have I? Well, it's the same one. I'll go back to it. So when you're looking at these, if you've got them on the screen, you can actually increase the screen. And when we look at some of these emotions, because the scale of consciousness was devised by a scientist named David Hawkins, and probably 15 or 20 years ago, I read the book Power versus Force, where this came from. And they muscle tested to get a vibrational frequency of all these different emotions. And so what they found was things like shame and guilt and apathy were really down low. And then anger was about 150, pride, courage, neutral was 250, willingness 310, acceptance 350, finding that inner light 400, inner wisdom, inner love, and just love, that's 500. Oneness, and there's different words for this down in the other picture down below as well. Oneness is that joyful feeling, but it's also gratitude's up there where between 540 and about 700. Presence, non-duality. So that's one map of consciousness. But what we realize that if we're really down low, reaching for any of these higher emotions is going to be an improvement. It's going to help us feel a whole lot better. So as I said, I think last time I also said that if I've got a client that's really feeling absolute grief and fear, getting them angry is going to be a better option. So if I've got somebody that's really down low, I might encourage them to feel really angry at somebody so we can rise it up, because then once we get up to angry, we can start to shift them to feeling courageous about making some changes, or feeling a level of acceptance. Well, this is what I've got at the moment, so now we can start to make some changes. So that's just an interesting way to start looking at things too, remembering that all our emotions are actually good for us. They're there to try to help us take better care of ourselves. We're going to do our demonstrations. So I'm going to, before we do any demonstration, I think that's where we're up to now. There's a couple of pictures on the bottom of the book. Before we do our demonstration, which is going to be doing some of the EMDR and some hypnosis and maybe the spin technique. So before we do that, we're going to have just a little break so you can have a bathroom check, and then we're going to come back and you can make yourself nice and comfortable. How does that sound? Is that fine?
Yeah.
Perfect. So let's just have maybe a 5-minute break, and I will see you back here in 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Recording. Excellent. So welcome back from our little break, everybody. So we're going to do the eye movement now. And so what I'd like you to do is just think of a subject or a topic that's been concerning you, and just close your eyes and just get a sense of the number 0 to 10, what that might be. Put a score on it. Excellent. And now what I want you to do is just, I'm thinking about you looking at my finger, but I don't know whether you can see that on the screen, but opening those eyes, you may be best to even do it with yourself, to follow your fingers from side to side. And let's just do that for 10 to 30 seconds while you're thinking about that other incident that's causing you some concern. And it might be past, it might be present, might be worrying about something from the future. Because in the jungle, if we were walking through the jungle, our eyes would be just moving from side to side. And this little pattern of just moving those eyes itself can start to change the process patterning in the brain. Just breathing in and breathing out. There are actually 8 steps to the process if we were doing it here in our room, but we're just going to take it nice and easy here today. And just stopping whenever you're ready. Now just check in with your body and start to notice how you're feeling. What number would that be at the moment? Has it gone down? Just check in and notice what you're feeling there. Have you noticed a shift in the way you're feeling about that thing now? Just notice what you're feeling. Excellent. So now we're going to just check in again, and we're just going to go and do the spinning technique. And this is a nice quick one. And just make that a bit smaller so that we can recognize any of those other emotions that might be still sitting there. So I want you just to bring up another episode, another thing that might be bothering you, maybe worrying about another person or money, or worrying about something else you've had happen in the past, something that's concerning you now, or something that might be a problem for the future. Now just stop for a moment and pick a number for that incident, whatever that might be. And now notice where you feel that in your body, as a heaviness or a tension or a tightness. And then notice if it's got a color. Sometimes it'll have a color, sometimes it won't. You just get a sense of a movement, because there has to be movement in there, otherwise you wouldn't even feel it. So which direction is it going in now? Now just imagine pulling it out of that part of your body and holding it out in front of you and seeing it moving in whatever direction that might be. And now speed it up. Let it go as fast as you can possibly do. Just visualize that now going round and round and round and round, faster and faster and faster. Now, if you want to, you can try reversing it. Faster and faster, faster and faster. Now slam it back in. Put it right back into that space. Take a breath. And now see if it's there. See if it's even disappeared altogether. See if you can feel that tension or that tightness. So these are just very simple little techniques. You can shift, because once you recognize those emotions, you can start to change the way our mind processes them. That's it. And really just relaxing. And scanning that body once again. That's it. And then opening your eyes whenever you're ready. And just coming back to the room for a moment. So, Kim, did you notice any shifts in those 2 techniques? Did you notice a shift in the way that your body felt, the way that you feel about those incidences now, if you bring them up again?
I like the second one, the spinning one. I certainly felt a change. I'm not so
Awesome.
sure with the rapid eye one.
Yeah, so I think that one probably works better in therapy in a situation here.
Watching
Alicia,
your fingers.
Yeah, because you're on a little tiny screen, so it's not going to be the same. Alicia, did you notice any shifts in either of those techniques?
I noticed in the spinning one when it like came back into my body, it jumped from my the feeling jumped from my tummy to my head.
Oh, that's pretty cool, isn't it? When we think of it. Very good. From where to your head?
From my
From your
tummy.
tummy to your head. Okay. So then that gives us an option to do the whole technique again. But what we're going to do now is we're just going to take a big breath in, and I'm just going to see if I can bring up my little spiral. I've got a spiral somewhere. I'm going to do some screen sharing again, and I've got a spiral and I hope it works. I tried it before. That's not big enough. We want it bigger than that. Goodness me, it's not working at all. It's supposed to be really big. Maybe I won't bother with that, but actually that'll work. So I want you just to focus on the center of the spiral for a moment. And as you continue to focus on that spiral, now just take a big breath in and close your eyes down. That's it. And start to let your mind just relax so much now. As you just let those eyelids relax. Let them become so relaxed they just couldn't be bothered to work. So they're so comfortable they just don't need to work. And as you do that, when you know you really relax them to the right level, then you might just want to give them a little test to make sure of that, to make sure you really have relaxed them to the right level. And then stop testing and go deeper relaxed. And imagine now that you could take that same level of comfort that's in your eyes and take it all the way down across your body as if it were this beautiful wave now flowing from the top of your head down to the tips of those toes. Now every breath can take you deeper, every thought can take you deeper, and every sound can take you deeper too. Just knowing that there's nowhere you need to be but here. Simply taking some time out for you to make these changes. Because the truth is, if things don't change, they're probably going to stay the same, and you might know it, but if you were to put a frog in a pot of water and you slowly started to heat the water up, that frog would not even notice the changes taking place, but he would certainly meet a pretty unhappy ending. So it's always important to notice any changes that they do occur. And so again, focusing on those eyelids, let them relax even more now. So they're so comfortable, they just won't work. So relaxed. They couldn't be bothered to work. And then once again, when you know you've done that, give them another little test to make sure of that. And then stop testing, just go deeper again. Like that beautiful wave flowing from the top of your head down to the tips of those toes. And now, of course, every breath can take you deeper, every thought can take you deeper, and every sound can take you deeper, knowing you're safe and secure as we work together now. Excellent. So because we do so much better with practice, one more time, I'd like you just to focus on those eyelids, and once again, just let them relax even more. So they're so comfortable they won't work, so relaxed they couldn't be bothered to work. And then one last time, just testing them to make sure of that. And again, stop testing and just go deeper relaxed. And once again, take that same level of comfort that's in your eyes and just take it all the way down across your body again. It's like a beautiful wave now flowing from the top of your head down to the tips of those toes. Now every breath takes you deeper, every thought takes you deeper, every sound takes you deeper. Knowing you're just safe and secure, calm and relaxed as we work together. Excellent. And so now we've got that beautiful level of comfort washing through the body. Let's just begin to relax the mind. And so I'm going to count from 1 to 5. And as I say the number 5, what I'd like you to do is just let your mind just begin to relax even more so. So by the time I say the number 5, you could let your own mind become so relaxed. It could be as though you want to go maybe 10 times deeper now. Now, if you want that, you can have that, because it's all self-hypnosis. So 1, just drifting deeper and deeper down now. 2, as if just drifting down through an inner world. 3, that relaxation continuing to deepen and double more and more. With every breath you take, with every thought you think, with every sound that you hear, with every word I say. 4, the deeper you go, the better you feel. And the better you feel, the deeper you go. And 5, as though you just want to go 10 times deeper now. From the top of your head down to the tips of those toes. Now, one more time, I'm going to count from 1 to 5, and this time I'd like you to double that relaxation for me. Want that, and you can have that. So 1, just drifting deeper and deeper. 2, as if just drifting down through that inner world once again. Safe and secure, calm and relaxed. 3, your relaxation continuing to deepen and double more and more. With every breath you take, with every thought you think, with every sound that you hear, with every word that I say. 4, the deeper you go, the better you feel. And the better you feel, the deeper you go. And 5, as though you just want to double that relaxation for me now. That's it. And so the 3 main things that we do when we do hypnosis. The first thing that we do when we do hypnosis is that I can just talk, and just by following instructions, you've already got this beautiful level of comfort washing through the body and the mind. Now, the second thing we do when we do hypnosis is that I can talk about different pictures and images, and just because I mentioned certain things, you could then see them within the mind's eye. So, for example, even though you may not have been thinking about it a moment ago, well, now that I mention it, you could probably become even more aware. Perhaps of an image of a younger you on, near, or even around a swing having some fun. You might be sitting on the swing or pushing the swing, or just watching someone else on a swing. Again, it doesn't really matter. It's just about knowing you can bring that picture up easily enough. That's it. Or just because I mentioned, you could probably now bring up an image of a young you on, in, near, or even around water, just having some fun. Maybe sitting at the beach, the river, the dam, the swimming pool, maybe in that water, maybe on it in a boat, or maybe playing with the water pistol. Again, it doesn't matter. It's just about knowing we can just bring those pictures up even if we need to. And so the third thing that we do when we do hypnosis is we start to focus more on these different feelings and sensations, like the feeling of whatever it is that's supporting your body there now. It might be a chair, it might be a bed, it might be a comfy position somewhere where you're safe and secure. And so as you relax there now, I want to firstly start to work on making some changes by undoing some of the old thinking patterns. And then we're going to talk about depression as well. Because as I mentioned to you, there are lots of reasons that we develop these styles of thinking. And a lot of them are all to do with our early childhood programs that tell us that we're not good enough or we don't deserve to be happy or whatever that may be. And we're just going to have a look at how criticism and negative expectation or assessment of others or by others from the past can affect our self-esteem. And then we're going to look at how we can start to really undo those negative effects of other people's programming. So we start to live in accordance with our own lives, our own agenda. Because you see, research shows us that anybody that's got issues with their self-esteem and confidence are much more likely to have been abused in some way. Now, constant criticism and put down is a form of emotional abuse because it undermines our identity. And certainly everybody's been criticized at some time, but if that criticism continues and it's not balanced with a fair amount of positive feedback, it's going to seriously damage our self-esteem. You see, criticism is an unrealistic, negative overgeneralization that is always wrong, unfair, and inaccurate. And I say this because it attacks our identity as a person rather than just commenting about something you may have done or not done. So, for example, you haven't done the washing up. It might be a fair and accurate complaint in a specific set of circumstances, but when it translates into you're always so lazy, that's just a sweeping, unrealistic criticism. So consider the other complaints and how they then turn into criticisms. You're not listening to me becomes you never listen to me. They're just generalizations. Why you misbehave becomes why you're such a bad child. Criticism is always exaggeration, but the danger is we start to take those exaggerations seriously. But just remember, nobody on earth is lazy all the time, which is another reason why those criticisms are always unrealistic. People who criticize you, they attack you personally rather than just complaining about your behavior. To them, you are that behavior. And their criticism then implies that you are lazy or stupid or whatever all of the time. And so to them, it's not what you do that's at fault, it's what you are as a person. But a complaint, on the other hand, is time-limited and specific. It doesn't attack you personally at your core as a human being. Now, criticisms are also pretty unpleasant to receive because they're often accompanied by disgusting looks and raised voices and sometimes cursing and swearing, and all of those things, again, make being criticized much more of an emotional experience for you. And as we've talked about, when we are emotional, we become easy to brainwash and condition because it throws us back into fight or flight, into our subconscious programming mind. This is how repeated criticism then condition us to begin to think badly of ourselves and criticize ourselves inwardly and even feel disgusted and angry with ourselves. And when the criticisms of other people take root like this, then we start to criticize ourselves. And of course, our self-esteem is going to be lowered as we match that negative image that when we then have of ourselves. So it's always good to disentangle yourself from some of those negative past conditionings and criticisms. Now, firstly, consider how somebody else's negative perception of you may have limited your own behavior, your choices, and your actions in life. Maybe you turned down challenges that if only you had more faith in yourself, you could have risen to. Maybe you avoided relationships or friendships because that self-critical little voice in your head told you somebody was too good for you. Maybe you've had a fear of failure because every time you tried, somebody gave you a hard time instead of letting you learn that learning to grow and succeed is about overcoming obstacles, falling down and realizing we can get back up again. Because when you were a tiny little child, when you fell over, When you were learning to walk, you didn't stay there. You got back up and you kept walking again and again. You kept falling down again and again until finally you learned to walk and you learned to run. It's the same with anything in our life. But if we keep trying to get up and someone keeps putting us down, then of course we get to a point where we stop trying. But I want you to really challenge that in your own mind. Because what you'll find is if you had a lot of excessive criticism, then you become oversensitive as a result. And when that happens, sometimes we feel as if we're being criticized even when we're not. This feeling then leads you to defensive behavior. And fortunately, this sensitivity and defensiveness lifts as your general confidence starts to strengthen and grow. The people that criticize, they don't necessarily intend to damage your self-esteem. Sometimes they sincerely believe they're just giving you some accurate feedback. They may not really believe that you're always dumb or always lazy or stupid or whatever. Sometimes they may just think that they're pointing out things about you that they don't like, but they forget to tell you all the wonderful things that they do like. Now, if you do later go and challenge that person and ask them and say, you know, when you said, I'm a stupid idiot, do you really think I'm stupid at everything? Or were you just angry that I spilt the milk? Now, usually if that person is a decent person, once they calm down, they backtrack from that gross critical overgeneralization. But I want to really emphasize criticism's never true. Nobody can do everything wrong. Not impossible. And all of us have gone through a door or tied our shoelaces or blinked at the right time when the dust is blowing at us. So we've all got these little mini areas of success in our lives that we don't even take account of a lot of the times. And so it really is about opening up our mind to seeing things in a whole new way. Because life is too short to be held prisoner by someone else and their perceptions. So it's time to challenge those criticisms. Because that's just like having a rainy day and thinking the weather's bad all over the planet at the same time. And if we don't challenge them in person, we can still challenge those criticisms in our own mind. Somebody might say, gosh, you're dumb. And you might say, well, how come I learned to drive a car? But I want you to also remember words like success or failure, clever or stupid, they are just relative terms anyway. Because nobody's successful in everything they do in their life and nobody fails at absolutely everything. And all of us can do some silly things no matter how clever we are in other areas of our lives. So criticisms don't even take account of the relative nature of life. All they do is focus on these impossible absolutes. So don't buy into that any longer. Because what you'll find is after you've had those repeated criticisms, then you start to hear that little voice in your own head telling you that the world's a scary place or that you can't possibly do something. Limiting your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions in your life and limiting you in your life. Now, if that's the case, ask yourself, where did the voice come from? Because you see, what I want you to remember is you were born into this world with no concept of having any limitations or self-doubt. Where did you learn that from? So think about that critical little voice that comes up, that rumination voice. What if this? What if that? And ask yourself who it really belongs to. Now, it's not that we're trying to blame anybody. That doesn't solve any problems. It's just that you learn things you didn't need to learn. So I want you to think about what that self-critical voice might even sound like in your head, whether it's whiny, shrill, or deep, and just think about that for a moment. And then I want you just to imagine having like this, a little control over that voice, like a remote control for that matter. Notice turning the volume down on that voice right now. And then notice it getting fainter and weaker and just dying away. That's it. Because you see, you can really become very good at drowning out and just ignoring that old pathetic, negative, limiting inner voice. That's it. And then I want you to notice another voice, an encouraging voice, the sort of voice that lets you know you can do stuff, you can do whatever you like, you can try new things, you can meet your own needs in life in lots of satisfying and useful ways. Now, this could be the voice of somebody you know, it could be a kind of imaginary, positive, encouraging voice. Might be something from TV, a voice from TV from your favorite hero, or from a book that speaks to you, or a favorite teacher that was inspiring you. But just notice in your own imagination right now the sound of this new, strong, kind, and empowering voice, and all the kinds of encouraging and empowering words that it's got for you. Good. And now I want you just to listen to the sound of my voice. And I want you to imagine now in colors and pictures and shapes and sounds, a kind of situation where in the past that little mean critical voice would have tried to dictate your feelings and responses. So just getting us into that situation now, that's it. And then notice what happens when you turn the volume down. And just give that new voice a chance to give you a chance. Listen to what it's got to say, because it's going to have a whole lot more to do with the real you from here on in. That's it. Now I want you to notice yourself now within your mind, doing something within your own imagination in such a way as you never dreamed you'd be able to do. And it can be anything at all. But it could be such an invigorating, wonderful experience, seeing yourself overcoming an old obstacle, doing something in a whole new way, and doing it with a smile on your face, being successful, being happy, being healthy. And then I want you to really begin to notice your body beginning to relax so much more comfortably and deeply now. Those eyelids, they can be so soundly restful and relaxed. Those fingertips just resting with such calmness and comfortable feelings. That's it. And right now within your mind, now get a sense of drifting out into a better future and feeling so much more relaxed. But also noticing all the times and the situations when you can just turn down the volume and that old negative voice. What if this? What if that? What if everything turns out amazingly, wonderfully? Allow that beneficial, positive, and much fairer voice to change your life for the better. And then notice within your mind now the pleasure and the satisfaction of just overcoming these old limitations and just being and doing things differently with so much more faith in yourself. And then you might imagine somebody being a little bit critical of you, but feeling so totally detached from what they're saying. Maybe even seeing that shield, white light enveloping you. Their stuff bounces off like water off a duck's back, and thinking to yourself, that might be your opinion. I don't have to agree with it. Seeing their gross exaggerations, noticing all the overgeneralizations for what they really are. Somebody else's issues that they're projecting onto you that have nothing to do with you. They don't even know you. Feeling so strong, so outside of it now. Just transcending their words and being so much more than their limited ideas can even comprehend. And noticing how liberating this feels now to be above and beyond and outside mere criticism, because nobody knows you like you do. And you are a work of art in progress. And so getting a sense of really being on your own side from here on in, being for yourself, because if you don't, who else can be? As if you can now see yourself sitting in a really comfortable chair with all these wonderful, comfortable things around you. Imagine seeing yourself there in this comfortable, magical, comfortable chair right there in front of you. And really getting a sense of seeing yourself looking so much more relaxed, so much more comfortable, so poised, so confident, while you're resting so deeply now Then I want you to, within the power of your mind, show some confidence and faith and self-belief and strength and encouragement to yourself right now. Because in a few seconds, I want you to say something wonderful, something kind, soothing, and inspiring to yourself through the power of your mind. Telling yourself, yes, you've been through a lot of stuff, but look, you're still standing. That you are good enough, smart enough, strong enough, attractive enough, kind enough, lovable enough. In fact, you're everything you're meant to be for this lifetime. You didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. You're fine just as you are. You're a work of art in progress. And then imagine saying anything else that you there really needs to hear that's going to give her a lift. Not only now, but later on in life. And this is how we start to come out of those old patterns. And so, as we were saying before, it's about learning to think differently. And so when something comes up, we're going to start using something else. I'm going to pop into that manual. Byron Katie's 4 questions. And Byron Katie is an author. She said, when a thought comes up that's not serving us, first question, is this true? Is it true? That one question can really change your life. So be still and ask yourself if the thought is true. You could write the thought down when a thought comes up and then ask, is this true? Second question, can you absolutely know that it's true? Now, this is another opportunity to open your mind to go deeper into the unknown, to find the answers that live beneath what we think that we know. Next question, how do you react? What happens when you do believe that thought? And with this question, you can begin to notice internal cause and effect. And then you start to really notice whether you believe that thought, because there's this disturbance that can really range from a mild discomfort or a fear or a panicky feeling. So check in, what do you feel? And how do you treat a person or a situation that's going through that? And how do you treat yourself if you believe that thought, when you believe it? And then you can make a list and be really specific, because these 4 questions can really free you. How do you react if you believe it? And the 4th question is really interesting. Who would you be without that thought? Good question. So just imagine yourself in the presence of another person going through that situation, your other internal self, or in that situation without believing the thought. Imagine yourself there without believing it. How would your life be different if you didn't have the ability or even think of the stressful thought at all? How would you feel if you just left it behind? Which do you prefer rather, the life with the thought or the life without the thought? Which one feels kinder and more peaceful? That's it. Then the next part of this process is to turn the thought around. Because the turnaround gives you an opportunity to experience the opposite of what you believe. And once you've found one or more turnarounds to your original statement, then I want you to think about finding at least 3 specific genuine examples of how you're not like that, how each turnaround's true in your life. And so life is simple. Everything is happening for you, not to you. Everything happens at exactly the right moment, neither too soon nor too late. You don't have to like it. It's just easier if you start to choose what you think. And as long as you think that the cause of your problem is outside of you, as long as you think that anyone or anything else is responsible for your suffering, the situation is going to be hopeless, because it means that you are forever in the role of being a victim, that you're suffering. So a thought itself, it's harmless unless we believe it. It's not our thoughts, but our attachment to our thoughts that causes the suffering. Attaching to our thoughts means believing that they're true without inquiring them. A belief is a thought that we've been attached to, often for many, many years. I'm a lover of what is, not because I'm a spiritual person, but because it hurts when I argue with reality. So how do you react when you think that you need other people's love? Do you then become a slave for their approval? Do you live an inauthentic life because you can't bear the thought that somebody might disapprove of you? So we are trained to be people pleasers. Do you try to figure out how they would like you to be and try to become that, like a chameleon? In fact, you never really get their love anyway. You turn into somebody that you aren't. And then when they say, oh, I love you, you don't believe it anyway because they're loving a false view. They're loving someone who doesn't exist, the person you're pretending to be. So it's difficult to seek other people's approval and their love. It's deadly. And in the seeking, you lose what is genuine. That's the prison that we create for ourselves when we try to get other people's opinions, other people's appreciation and acceptance, without doing the work to love ourselves. Because the truth is, we didn't come here for other people's approval. We came here to find our own path. And when we find that we're not living in accordance with our own values, this is when we have emotional turmoils and things like depression. And this is why we want to really make some inroads here today to make things different. And as I've said, depression is the main focus of our talk here today. But it is exhaustion that's brought about by incredibly stressful times in our lives. That catastrophizing, the rumination. These are the things that cause and maintain that depression. That excessive worrying. It goes on, that rumination in the mind. And that overanalyzing. But the truth is, depression really is just a signal that there are things that are missing in your life. Because as a human being, we've got these important basic needs that have to be met. We've talked about them in our session here today. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the human givens, the basic emotional needs that we need to be happy and sustain a balanced life. Because you need a sense of safety and security. You need purpose and meaning. You need to give and receive quality attention to and from others. You need status and intimacy, a sense of community and connection to a wider group. You need a sense of control over your own life, and you also need emotional connections to other people. Now, when these needs are adequately satisfied, we start to really enjoy mental and emotional well-being. But depression's caused when we spend time in negative introspection, worrying about the needs that are not being met. And at the same time, then we just stop engaging in practical problem solving. And of course, we get stuck like a mouse on a wheel going round and round. We stop engaging in problem solving. So, for example, if you're worried you never meet that right special person, but you didn't take the time to develop skills to meet others and build new relationships, of course, that's going to be one reason that you could be depressed. And the problem is when we start to feel down, the things we used to enjoy just don't feel that good anymore. It starts to feel as though there's nothing worth doing, as if we just don't have the energy. But taking time out to relax deeply, this is one way of recouping some of the lost energy. And of course, it balances out the hormones, the adrenaline and cortisol. It gives you a chance to reset. Because depression drains energy from people. It leaves them feeling really flat and exhausted. So if you've been feeling down, again, it's a signal you need to take some time out to get your balance and rest. And that means doing that often. Now, depression also produces highly predictable patterns of thought and perception. Maybe you've noticed you sometimes think in those all or nothing, black or white terms. Everything's either completely this, completely that, success or failure, the perfectionist stuff. Totally this and totally that, no gray areas. And those perfectionist tendencies mean that you keep imagining the worst possible future scenarios. But as I've said, both these patterns are central to maintaining depression. Now, of course, you've probably noticed that it's harder to think clearly and logically when you're feeling down, because an anxious brain or a depressed brain is a stressed brain. The blood's going to the amygdala rather than the prefrontal lobes. And it means it's really difficult to think clearly and properly. And this is one reason why depressed people, when they relax deeply, they just feel so different afterwards. It's like they get their perspective back, or even like getting a brain back. And so depressed people also have higher than those normal levels of the stressor hormones in their bloodstream that we mentioned, the adrenaline and the cortisol. This is another reason why calming down and relaxing is so important. But the truth is, depression distorts our perceptions, just as an agitated water surface doesn't reflect reality accurately or evenly. An agitated mind distorts reality, which is why those thoughts can then be overly dramatic and extreme, and sometimes so disturbing. So a depressed person tends to filter out anything that doesn't quite match their depressed view of the world. So when you are depressed, well, you're just interpreting everything through that filter, through that depressed filter, that depressed perspective. Just as, in fact, an angry person distorts everything to fit their angry perspective, or a lighthearted person just thinks everything's funny. So a depressed person tends to filter out anything that just doesn't match that view of the world, but not consciously, of course. Now, when your depression lifts, you start to relax more. And you see that more relaxed attitude then once again allows you to see the shades of grey between the blacks or whites of this world. Just so to sum up, a depressed brain is just a stressed brain. And it's when you start to really challenge the all or nothing dramatic hype your brain has been subjecting you to, that depression just finds its days are numbered, and you say goodbye to all those emotional extremes, those simplistic black or white negative thoughts like, oh, it's all my fault, or nothing will ever change, or everything's ruined, or they're perfect and I'm a failure. Instead, you just find your thoughts becoming a whole lot more moderate. And then you'll notice yourself thinking things like, hey, I screwed some of these things up, but bits are okay. And besides, nobody's perfect. But you see, then you start to notice you start to feel better. Because it's not what we think that has to change. It's the way that we feel that needs to change. And so as you relax there now, get a sense of drifting back down to a beautiful, safe place. As if you're just wandering down to this super calming place in your mind. Noticing all the kinds of colors and shapes, the sensations and sounds as you relax even more deeply. And sometimes the mind, just like water, can become so very still and calm and gentle and relaxed. And when a smooth sheet of beautiful water, perhaps with the sun gently reflecting off the surface, well, when it becomes very still and calm, then it can reflect reality around it without distortions or fragmentations. And you see, your mind, as it continues to calm and rest so deeply, can just objectively reflect. And into the reflection of your mind can now come the memory of times of things that have been good, free of that distorting tyranny of perfectionism, but just fairly reflecting now with total calm and rest, and recognizing now what is really a very strong part of you, and really appreciating and admiring it fairly and objectively so it just comes into focus. Now, in your mind, it could be anything at all. It might be things you've done well, times you've been really strong for yourself or for others, or skills you've learned and mastered, or even acts of generosity and challenges met with determination. Your mind now calmly, so calmly, just reviewing and reflecting on this as you just rest so much more completely now, to really getting a strong sense of your resources, because you see, just like previously unnoticed shafts of light illuminating the hidden depths of a cave, sources of hope in your mind are now beginning to emerge, and you are just going to get better and better at noticing them. So there may have been important things you've needed to do that you've been putting off. But in your mind right now, getting that sense of flowing through future time, and notice yourself now re-engaging with your life. Just doing some of those very necessary and important things, no matter how small. Something with a start, a middle, and an ending. And then in your mind, getting a sense of drifting into that better future, what it's like to wake up in the morning feeling refreshed and energized, with this protective coating around you that filters and only lets the sun shine in. Focusing on 3 good things, shifting your focus for what you're scanning for, and then getting a sense of moving forward in your life, just starting to do things again, but feeling calmer and much more relaxed day by day. And you could also notice in this better future, just feeling so much more resilient, more relaxed, more confident, so much physically better. And then getting a sense in your mind of enjoying things again, and really noticing that as you just relax so deeply. Because you're just going to find that everything just starts to feel so much calmer day by day, so much more settled and relaxed. And you can just remember all the work that we've done here today. It's really just going to help you start to move forward, finding more joy in your life, focusing on what gives you that joy, and doing things that make you feel happy, and choosing peace over being right sometimes, so that you can have a better life, knowing that you do deserve that. And so we are now about to complete our work here today in our mini workshop. And so in a moment, I'm going to count from 1 to 5. And as I say the number 5, you'll be able to come back to the room. So 1, becoming more aware now of whatever it is that's supporting your body. 2, becoming more aware of the breath, knowing that as you breathe in and breathe out, you're bringing that life-giving oxygen back into your body to sustain your life. And also giving signals to your mind that it's okay to relax now. So 3, getting a sense of the future that you want to have for yourself. That brighter future where you're focusing on what's good, those 3 good things, or that gratitude diary, bringing up more of what you want into your life by the law of attraction. 4, coming closer to the surface now, more and more aware and more awake. And 5, just coming all the way back to the room, knowing that you're already feeling better. So opening your eyes, feeling better than before. Coming back to the room, wherever you may be. And so if you'd like to turn your camera back on, you can. Excellent. So I know that you're back in the room. Alicia, are you back in the room as well?
Yep.
Excellent. So what I'd like you to do now, I'm just going to invite you to check in with your bodies and just check in with that level of emotion, that number that you had at the start, and see how you're feeling now. And just let me know if you're feeling, if that's shifted.
Yep, feeling good.
Excellent. Alicia, are you feeling better too?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. So thank you, ladies. It's now 1:45. And so I want to thank you for attending our mini blitz workshop on depression. Once we're finished here, I'm going to upload this recording to YouTube and share it on that page, and I'll send it to you guys as well so that you have that. But I really want to thank you, and I'm welcome any suggestions that you've got, any improvements that we can make, and just give me the feedback and let me know how you're feeling in a week or so as well, so we can start to make some shifts, not only in how we feel inside, but how we look at our life. So we start to filter and choose the way we want to think. So it's going to serve us rather than hold us back. And again, if you'd like to do any one-on-one work with me, I think I've got in this book somewhere on the manual, it says for the next 48 hours, there's a 10% discount in. We've got packs as well, 3 packs and 6 packs and that sort of stuff. But anyway, that's a choice for you down the future. Probably you're not going to need it right now. You're already going to be feeling a whole lot better. But I'm always here if you've got any questions or any way I can possibly help you. So thank you, guys. Any feedback at all?
Thanks, Carol. That was great.
Excellent. Wonderful. So I'm really glad you enjoyed our session. Alicia, I hope you're feeling a whole lot better as well.
Yes, very calm.
Awesome. That's what we want. So we will just we'll just now stop our recording. And thank you again, everyone. I hope you enjoyed our session here today.